2018 has been a big year in China news. Here are the 10 biggest stories you need to know about. This is China Uncensored. Number 10, the trade war begins. Trump has shocked everyone as president. All presidential candidates talk tough on China, but in Trump's case, he actually followed through. In fact, here he is in 2011, long before he ran for president, laying out what would become future U.S. policy toward China.
Somebody said, well, what would you do? What can you do? So easy. I drop a 25% tax on China.
And that may be coming true. In July this year, Trump announced the first round of U.S. tariffs on China. It was in response to decades of unfair trade practices and intellectual property theft. And the trade war heated up quickly. First, Trump announced a 25% tariff on $50 billion worth of Chinese imports, divided into two chunks, $34 billion to begin with, then an additional $16 billion that came later. The Chinese Communist Party was not happy.
China has no choice but to fight back strongly to resolutely protect its national interests and the people's interests, and to resolutely defend globalization and the multilateral trading system. We will immediately publish levies of the same scale and same strength.
And so, China announced its own tariffs on $50 billion worth of American imports. And then, Trump responded with an additional 10% tariff on another $200 billion worth of Chinese imports.
We've taken decisive action to address our trade imbalance with China. We've put tariffs on $250 billion in Chinese goods, and we could more than double that number. But we hope for better. The United States, though, will not change course until China changes its ways.
China did not change its ways. It responded with an additional $60 billion in tariffs. But the U.S. buys more stuff from China than vice versa, so the U.S. can hit China harder. And the plan was, starting January 1st, 2019, that 10% tariffs on $200 billion worth of Chinese goods would shoot up to 25%. But on the sidelines of the G20 summit in December, Trump agreed to delay those tariffs for 90 days. That aims to allow both sides to reach an agreement on structural changes with respect to forced technology transfer, intellectual property protection, non-tariff barriers, cyber intrusions, and cyber theft. So, something to look forward to in the new year. Maybe. Number 9. Cold War II. For years, the U.S. policy toward China was one of engagement. If we keep engaging with the Chinese Communist Party, eventually they'll reform and become a democracy. Yeah, that didn't work. So, 2018 saw a major shift in U.S. policy toward China. In July, just as the trade war was about to kick off, FBI Director Christopher Wray called China the biggest threat to the U.S.
Well, I think China, from a counterintelligence perspective, in many ways represents the broadest, most challenging, most significant threat we face as a country. We have economic espionage investigations in every state, all 50 states, that trace back to China.
Shortly after, the CIA said the U.S. is in another Cold War, this time with China.
By their own terms, and what Xi Jinping himself enunciates, I would argue by definition, John McLaughlin raised this issue earlier in describing Russia, but what they're waging against us is fundamentally a Cold War. A Cold War not like we saw during the Cold War, but a Cold War by definition. A country that exploits all avenues of power, licit and illicit, public and private, economic, military, to undermine the standing of your rival relative to your own standing, without resorting to conflict.
Unlike the Cold War between the U.S. and the Soviet Union, the one that almost ended the world in nuclear fire, turns out this new Cold War is even more difficult.
The United States and Soviet Union had minimal interaction in the economic and academic spheres as the two sides maintained strict barriers to mutual trade and academic exchanges. Today, by contrast, the United States and China are deeply intertwined in economic, trade, academic, and other realms, posing unique challenges for the United States across a range of areas.
Let's just hope Cold War II doesn't lead to World War III. Number 8. Secret Agent Man. Meng Hongwei is the president of Interpol, the world's largest police organization. Sorry, he was. Sometime in September, he disappeared in China. You see, Meng Hongwei also was the deputy minister of China's Ministry of Public Security. I mean, until China's Ministry of Public Security arrested him. Then they said the investigation against him was very timely, absolutely correct, and rather wise. Meng was also linked to disgraced former security czar Zhou Yongkang. I've talked about Zhou Yongkang before. He's the one who looks like a fleshy thwomp from Super Mario Bros. Chinese leader Xi Jinping purged Zhou Yongkang because he's tied to former Chinese leader Jiang Zemin. And Zhou Yongkang was one of his top guys in charge of China's police. So, Meng was tied to that. Okay, I know it sounds complicated, so let me sum it up. Everyone is corrupt. The thing is, Meng Hongwei was one of the few Chinese nationals who held important positions in international organizations. The Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs said at the time it was a sign that China was ready to take on bigger responsibility and make greater contribution to push for global law enforcement. But that did not work out. Number 7, another fateful arrest. In December, on behalf of U.S. authorities, Canada arrested Meng Wanzhou. She's the CFO of Huawei, one of China's biggest telecom companies. She's not related to the Interpol guy, Meng Hongwei, just another Meng. Huawei's Meng Wanzhou faces extradition to the U.S. for allegedly violating U.S. sanctions on Iran. Obviously, Chinese state-run media said her arrest was a huge violation of human rights. Of course, their immediate arrest of 2 Canadian citizens right after that happened was totally cool. The U.S. State Department is considering issuing a travel warning to U.S. citizens going to China. But either way, this is a huge challenge to the Chinese regime, one that would have been unthinkable even a year ago. Number 6, Google changes its view on evil. Back in May, Google removed its famous "Don't be evil" motto from its code of conduct. Well timed, because a few months later, a Google employee leaked documents that the company was secretly building a censored search engine mobile app for China. The secret project is called Dragonfly. China has an internet market of at least 750 million users. That's bigger than the entire population of Europe. Basically, there's a ton of money Google could be making in China. And now that Google isn't concerned about being evil, they can finally tap into it. Top people at Google have been scrambling to deny it, without ruling out the possibility that they might try to get back into China in the future. To help spread information. But Google has faced a lot of criticism. Amnesty International protested. And 500 Google employees signed a letter calling for Google to drop Dragonfly. And just recently, the CEO had to testify before the House Judiciary Committee. And in a turn of events that is totally not suspicious, Google's office in Beijing caught fire. It happens. Number 5, Presentator for life. Did you know Xi Jinping is one of the most popular leaders of China ever? Yeah. When he was elected by China's National People's Congress in 2013, it was almost unanimous. I say almost because one person voted against him. I'm sure that one guy won't make the same mistake again. But at the beginning of 2018, the National People's Congress decided Xi Jinping is just so great, he should stick around a little longer. Like, forever.
The Communist Party this weekend announcing a proposal to scrap the 2-term limit for presidents, meaning Xi Jinping could stay on indefinitely.
Changes to the Constitution in the last year have made Xi the most powerful Chinese leader since Mao Zedong, the founder of the People's Republic, who died in office having never retired.
That was a move I predicted back in 2016, that Xi would become not quite a dictator, not quite a president, but more of a presentator. And now he's presentator for life. And while they took presidential term limits out of the government's constitution, they also added something in. Xi Jinping thought for a new era. It's a special brand of thought that's all Xi all the time. Number 4, bumps in the Belt and Road. Malaysia had been a cornerstone of the Belt and Road Initiative. That's China's $1 trillion investment scheme that has trapped many countries in debt. And even though a lot of this investment is from so-called private Chinese companies, it's all connected to the Chinese Communist Party, including being financed by state-run banks. But on the bright side, Chinese state-run media made some pretty catchy songs about it. But this year, Malaysia hit the brakes on the Belt and Road. And that's thanks to the surprise election of the 92-year-old Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad. One of the reasons he got elected was his criticism of Chinese investment.
And none of our people are employed as workers. None of our companies are used for designing and planning and supervising, etc. We gain nothing.
He's now canceled several major Chinese investment projects. And following this example, other countries are starting to rethink Chinese investment too. That seems to be a theme for the year. Number 3, a love triangle. In 2017, President Trump spent a lot of time wooing Chinese leader Xi Jinping.
Our relationship with you and China is a very important one to me. The United States, the feeling we have for China is a very warm feeling, and I really believe it's only going to get warmer.
But in 2018, Trump met with another of Asia's fearless leaders.
It was the handshake seen around the world. Tuesday's meeting is the very first between a North Korean leader and a sitting U.S. president.
Getting a good picture, everybody, so we look nice and handsome and thin.
A photo that makes this guy look handsome and thin. They're photographers, not miracle workers. But Trump really laid it on thick.
2 men, 2 leaders, 1 destiny.
Believe it or not, that's a promo video made by the White House. But besides TV ratings, there may be another good reason Trump put so much effort into his meeting with Kim. It helped create a direct relationship with North Korea without China in the middle. China and North Korea have always been close, from Deng Xiaoping to Jiang Zemin to the guy we all forgot about, to a reluctant Xi Jinping. China always saw North Korea as strategically valuable. If the Western world wanted to talk to China's nuclear-crazed neighbor to the north, China got to be the middleman, and that gave China a lot of political leverage. Want to talk to North Korea? Best play nice with China. But this handshake changed all that. So it's probably no wonder that after Trump had the meeting with Kim Jong-un, Trump was ready to launch the trade war with China. A little less to worry about. Number 2, deal with the devil. The officially atheist Chinese Communist Party has long been fighting the Vatican over who has the right to appoint Catholic bishops in China. Yeah, really. The party has even in some places demanded Christians take down pictures of Jesus and replace them with pictures of Xi Jinping. So it was a bit of a surprise to everyone that all year long the Pope was trying to strike a deal with the Chinese Communist Party, and he eventually succeeded. That was despite desperate pleas from Hong Kong cardinals who were like, you know, this is probably a bad idea. The Pope agreed to recognize 7 bishops appointed by Beijing. Granted, 2 of them had mistresses and 1 had been excommunicated, but I guess Pope Francis decided to take what he could get. The problem is, and I know this will shock you, the Chinese Communist Party has already reneged on its deal. And they disappeared a Catholic bishop that the Pope had appointed earlier. And finally, it's time for the biggest China news story of 2018. Number 1, Uyghurs. The biggest story of the year in terms of impact on actual people has come from Shenyang in western China. As state-run media put it, the government has set up vocational training schools to create employment and promote stability for all the Uyghur people living there. And nothing proves their vocational training schools, and definitely not prisons, like the tools of the trade. Purchase requisitions for one of those vocational schools shows that they purchased police batons, electric cattle prods, handcuffs, and pepper spray. Important training tools. Currently, there are over 1 million Uyghurs in what might more accurately be described as internment camps. Which is perfect, in a way, because it leaves plenty of room for the 1 million non-Uyghurs the Chinese regime sent over to stay in the homes of their families and spy on them. China has built an advanced surveillance state inside Xinjiang. So really, it's not that different from anywhere else in China. except for all the ethnic genocide. So those are the top 10 Chinese news stories of 2018. Which was your favorite? And hey, since it's the start of a new year, why not let me know in the comment section below about how you first found out about China Uncensored. Thanks for watching. Once again, I'm your host, Chris Chappell. See you in 2019.